The first U.S. Marines have arrived in Australia as America boosts its military presence in the Asia-Pacific region. More than 2,000 personnel will be deployed there over the next few years. It adds to America's military footprint in such countries as Japan, the Philippines, and Singapore, all, of course, in China's backyard. Well, Asia Times roving correspondent Pepe Escobar now joins us live from Bangkok. Pepe, thanks for being with us once again. The deal also includes an increased presence of U.S. warships and military aircraft operating from an Australian base. How will this cooperation further develop as you see it?
Look, I happened to be in Beijing yesterday, and the analysts I talked to yesterday, they were not very impressed by the subtlety of this Marine welcoming committee. Delegations that go to Australia almost every week, right? So look, there's only one thing about this whole thing, which is encircling, if not harassing China, or the other way around, rather harassing. It starts with these 2,500 Marines in Darwin, north of Australia. Australia and the US, they are discussing a closer collaboration in a naval base in Perth, in Western Australia. Then there's the Malacca Strait, through which China imports oil from the Middle East, especially from Iran and Saudi Arabia. There's a plan to closer cooperation with Singapore as well, and stationing of U.S. warships, more stationing of U.S. warships in Singapore. Then there's the Philippines, plans for more rotational troops based in the Philippines. Then there's Guam, east of the Philippines. More American warships and more troops as well. There are around 4,500 at the moment. They want to double it. And then, don't forget, there's Japan, 40,000 U.S. troops. South Korea, 28,500 U.S. troops. Plus roving U.S. troops in the North China Sea and near the Sea of Japan, 16,500. So this is rather a fantastic welcoming committee to emergence of China as a great superpower. But the Chinese know it. They know this is about American control of the Western Pacific and the South China Sea, and they will have their countermeasures in place, of course.
What do you think that some of those countermeasures could be? I mean, you really paint quite a buildup of military presence by the U.S. in the region. What are we going to see from Beijing more specifically?
Well, they are building a nuclear submarine. They are improving their Navy. They have a strategy which starts from the Middle East and goes up to the North China Sea, which is being derided by many think tanks in the US and by some Europeans as the string of pearls strategy, which is ports that the Chinese Navy has or will have access in the future. These ports are basically, I'll give some examples, in South Pakistan, in South Myanmar, for instance, in Bangladesh, but in the South China Sea, where lots of oil and gas are there for the taking. China will sit down with the ASEAN countries, the ASEAN 10 countries, including the Philippines that we mentioned, Vietnam, Singapore as well, which is a very close U.S. ally, and they will discuss all the remaining problems about energy exploitation in the islands. China doesn't have an expansionist strategy in the South China Sea, but now they are facing a U.S. expansionist strategy in their own backyard. So their countermeasures they are basically defensive measures, but it's not that the Chinese Navy tomorrow is going to start attacking boats in the South China Sea. But this is what some, I would say, some freaks in the Pentagon, that's their wishful thinking, actually.
Pepe, some of the countries that are hosting these military bases and allowing for this expansion at least seem okay, if not happy, with the presence there. Are they totally aware of what they're potentially signing up for here?
I'm not so sure. In terms of Singapore, yes, they know what they're doing, because Singapore is basically a U.S. aircraft carrier in Asia, in Southeast Asia, basically. In fact, their fear is not the U.S. Their fear is not China. Their fear is of Indonesia, their neighbor. 210 Muslims. And the collective leadership in Singapore, they're extremely wary of so many Muslims around their tiny and very wealthy island. Although the Indonesians, park their smuggled or their illegal money where? In Singapore. Vietnam, they have a very problematic, historically problematic relationship with China, but they don't want to antagonize China. In fact, they are replicating the Chinese model of development, and trade relations between Vietnam and China are closer. And the Philippines is very complicated because they used to be a U.S. colony. In many aspects, they still are. It's a very unstable country. When they had U.S. military bases in the Philippines, the population was against it. If they want to remix these bases all over again, expect a lot of popular protests in the Philippines. So it depends from country to country, but they know that they need ASEAN, they need China as a partner in ASEAN. They cannot antagonize it, and at the same time, they cannot say no to the Pentagon.
All right. Pepe Escobar, Asia Times roving correspondent, live with us on the line from Bangkok, Thailand this time. Thanks for your input.
Thanks very much.